Hi, my name is Jim McGreevey, and welcome to Second Chances. As we focus today on training opportunities for court-involved persons, particularly with the great Craig Cohen. Hey, Craig, can you tell us a little bit about you and your family and your long-time relationship with Apple?
Sure. So I've been working directly or indirectly for Apple literally since 1989. But I'm second generation. My father was an original developer or programmer back in the early 80s when the Mac really first came out.
And why is Apple sort of, you talk about the brilliance of Steve Jobs, and why is Apple Apple?
Apple always designs for the end user, the person actually in front of the keyboard, in front of that display. And their approach has always been about simplicity. So the end user can be creative and the end result being more productive. And it's really, since the introduction of the iPhone and the iPad, we've really seen the entire Apple ecosystem really make major gains in every facet of business, enterprise, back to education, higher education. And we've had a tremendous need for qualified IT people to come really help us deploy, manage, and secure.
So we have a group of professors from Columbia University who came through this and continue to come through the Reentry Training Center to understand best practices. How do we teach to persons who may not have achieved the academic proficiency because of their schooling or because of their past experience, or candidly their life, whether it's in prison and addiction treatment and as veterans in combat. But one thing I was taken back by, because technology just candidly has been a challenge for me, unlike my daughters, is that in the discussion with these professors as to Apple, and Apple in particular, their point was Apple's very different. And that Apple is relatively focused and simple insofar as it responds to the technology and responds to an individual where they're at. And my point was maybe I think sequentially in terms of ladders of understanding and growth, but their point is wherever you're at, there can be an Apple function for which you're proficient. Does that make sense?
Humbly, you can't teach creativity. Creativity you get from your environment, whether it be your parents or the lifestyles or the environments in which your clients have grown into. Apple doesn't require you to go a specific path. It's wide open and it's engaging. Like my children have individualized learning where they're engaged at a per person level, not the class must all march this way. It's here's our goal. Let's figure out how you can best get there.
So Apple almost gives you a language with which you can do whatever it is that you can do.
Or a path that's best for you. And your path is different than mine. And that's okay. We can still have access to the same device and get to where we both need to be. And you don't have to do it the same way I do, and it's okay.
So one more sentence so that for people that watch can understand, what is it that's unique about Apple that whether somebody who's just come out of prison or somebody who has a PhD in technology, why is it that they all can use or benefit by Apple technology?
Simplicity, engagement, creativity, productivity. That's it. Just the simplicity of it. I don't have to go to school to be the end user of that device.
So is that one of the reasons why it makes sense for somebody who's court involved to become a technician?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I can just tell you companies like mine, we need. And I don't really care where you're coming from. If you fit that need, I want you.
Okay, so just tell me a little bit. So here we are at our Reentry Training and Employment Center. So what will you be teaching folks in these two courses?
The first is just learning about the Apple ecosystem. It is unique. Everything is integrated at a hardware and a software level, and just the entire experience is integrated. So I'm trying to just make sure that they're aware of all the connections, the connective tissue of it. And then for those,
I love your language, by the way.
and
I feel like I'm sitting next to a physician.
Well, and let's go with that. When the person starts to understand the connective tissue, and they will enjoy it, hopefully.
Yep.
That next step is, well, how then can I teach them to support people like you who just want to use it, who don't need to understand how the magic works.
Yep.
Let me teach that ecosystem. Let me teach the magic behind it all.
Yep.
And then let them help the end user.
So let's just, sort of tease that out a little bit. So when you talk about the ecosystem and I understand the ecosystem of creation, the natural ecosystem. What is the Apple ecosystem? If you had to define it in 3 sentences, what would it look like?
Okay, so we're going to lead with privacy, transparency, and security.
So say that again.
Privacy, transparency, and security.
Well, those sound like 3 good values, virtues.
Absolutely.
So can you take one at a time?
Well, sure. I mean,
on privacy.
Great example. So my iPhone is provided by my company. My company allows personalization, which means I have the ability to send my kids messages or get an email from my mom. My company doesn't need to know what those messages are. That's my data, and my data can be separate from the organization's data, which, their concern stays on their organizationally owned device. So they're going to give me my privacy, but also their security.
And Apple's going to help facilitate that wall.
It's built in. Wall's an interesting answer, but yeah, I just like to call it just a separation of data. Walls that have a kind of puts me in a defensive place. It's not a wall, but okay.
Yeah. No, but if it's my private data,
that's right.
I want to make sure it's secure as opposed to being shared.
My organization and Apple do not need to know what I text my children and the emails from my family.
Okay, transparency.
So me as the end user, I know exactly how my organization is managing me. So if they're blocking certain apps because of a social networking app that they don't want me to use, or if they're restricting, or they even want me to have a stronger password or have all my data go through a certain network, I'm going to know about it. They're not hiding it from me. And when I say they, I don't just mean my organization, but how Apple chooses to manage me as the end user. I know exactly how I'm being managed.
And before we go on to the third, but how does that impact the person who's going to be from New Jersey Reentry sitting in your classroom? What are you going to teach them about transparency that they're going to need to know when they're working for or grappling with an Apple network?
So it's really how they're going.
Privacy I get.
Yeah.
Privacy is an understandable American virtue. God willing, we still believe it in this country is privacy.
I do.
But I think people are not intimidated, but concerned about social media, about tracking, financial tracking. My gosh, I just know, and I'm worth what's left in a spittoon, and how many people,
But you just answered your own question. That's exactly. So everybody's concerned about who sees what, and Apple is going,
and who can access what.
Exactly, and Apple is going to the end user. If you are so inclined, this is how you're being managed. Now, to fully answer your question.
On transparency, okay.
Yeah, so I can go to the person that I'm going to teach, and so you as the end user should be able to go to them. Can you tell me how I'm being managed right now? And managed being the all-encompassing word of privacy, security, and the transparency. They should be able to explain it to you.
So I get that in the employment situation. So I should be able to talk to New Jersey Reentry and say, how are you interfacing with my technology?
Right.
And God willing, when people have the benefit of your classroom instruction and Apple instruction, they'll be able to understand that. This isn't on topic, but how do I secure that knowledge from Apple?
How do you secure that knowledge from Apple?
How do I know? Now, this is John Q. Citizen, so I shouldn't be even discussing this because we'd be talking about job training. But how is John Q. Citizen, how is Jim McGreevey or Craig or whomever watching this? How can we know what information Apple is exchanging or making available to the world?
I love that question because Apple has always been first in literally documenting they have, first of all, if you go to apple.com/privacy, that leads to the answers to all your questions.
Okay.
And people,
by the way, I'll never do it.
I know, but people out there, they can
you.
go to apple.com/privacy, and then there's even ways that you can see what is being collected by whom, and then decide if you want that deleted. And
so Apple goes out of their way to answer those questions thoroughly, vigorously.
Including from the App Store. They have something they call privacy labels. If I was an app developer, I have to disclose what I'm capturing.
So I really gave a darn as opposed to just thinking about it because I'm sitting down with Greg. I would have all of these options and venues with which not only to learn, but also to restrict and work to.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the third value? Privacy.
It was privacy, transparency, security. So I kind of feel like every day we're reading about another hack, whether it comes from state actors or just from nefarious people. So it'll never be perfect and it'll always be organic, but Apple is always leading the way on how to best secure your personal data as well as your organization data. So that's got to be the leader right now. It's a little scary. And I even think
Apple, Apple, by all accounts, is one of the great corporations in America. When you talk about privacy, you talk about transparency, you talk about security. Maybe none of us are ultimately happy with how decisions are always made, but they're made thoughtfully. They're made utilizing technology and trying to balance in an open democratic society. We're sitting here in Kearney, New Jersey with food boxes that 30,000 pounds of food that are going to go to folks all at reentry sites, people coming up from prison and jail and addiction treatment, and a lot of veterans, people that don't have money. So when don't have money, don't have assets. So when you think about a commitment to those that are court involved, to those without, one of the really engaging things, and I want to thank Lisa Jackson, who's vice president of McGreevey. But Lisa, who happens to be a Jersey gal and happened to be chief of staff to Governor Corzine and then worked for the Obama administration and gives a darn. It's pretty incredible to me, as we sit among these boxes that are going to feed people, that I'm sitting here with a guy who's as bright and capable as you are, who's going to train people who have come back, who we are privileged to serve, to be Apple tech support. How does that happen?
Well, I think we can both agree that we want to feed them first.
Yep.
Right? And then we can feed their mind.
Well, you're pretty good at this stuff.
Working with Apple for so long, it really is a mission. It's a never-ending mission. Whether it's people from your corp, your clients, or really, the HBCU, or just people who didn't have an opportunity. I was fortunate. I had an opportunity. And I appreciate and understand that opportunity. So if the only thing we can give your clients is an opportunity so they can choose, that's all I want them to have, is a choice. That's what I want for my children. That's what I want for everybody, is just an opportunity to choose. I think that's how we lead.
So, this is a broader question now for Apple, but technology isn't, I make sure my daughters have computers. I make sure they have access to the internet. Technology is a great thing, obviously, in terms of access to knowledge and information systems and bases. But it's also, Craig, a divide. Insofar as I saw it during COVID. One of the things that broke my heart is I saw families, I saw mothers in cars with their children trying to access the internet from the local library. And I just said, when people talk about the digital divide, it just becomes crushing. And I know my friend Josh Gottheimer is providing opportunities for people to access technology. But when I think as Americans, if we talk a good game about the quality of education, but I remember when I was mayor of Woodbridge, every public school, every parochial school, every private school, we made sure they had internet access. why is it in 2023 are we still like mucking around with access to both the computer and the internet for kids?
So technology can be the great equalizer. It can be. As far as internet, one is infrastructure. Saying everybody gets internet is great, but everybody getting quality connections takes time.
Yep.
Indecision is slowing that down. It should be, this is what we need, go make it happen.
To me, this is as important as building a road or a bridge or a tunnel, and I think that was the purpose of the Infrastructure Investment Act, to make
Agreed.
sure that we build a physical infrastructure, but we also build an information infrastructure. So when you say indecision, can you just parse that out?
Well, the person who's what I'll call laying the cable for this internet connection invariably is not going to be the government worker. It's not going to be the person who works for the town. It's going to be a business.
Yeah.
So by the time everything goes out to 3 bids, gets approved, gets done, it's politics. It's business.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking to Jada, who's brilliant, by the way.
Yes.
And, you know, we were talking about leaving, you know, we were talking about some of your next endeavors and sustainability.
Yeah.
And we said, you know, like my children should be fine, but their children, you know, I'm concerned about, which is sustainability. And then we also started talking about the generation that came before us, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers. They didn't think about sustainability at all. They just kind of got things done. Now, unfortunately, just getting things done kind of leaves things in its wake. Somebody's just got to make this decision and say, it's time.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. It's a balance, right? You have to make a decision. I think of my father, you know, their generation made decisions to move forward. And then when I look at, as you just said, which to me is evident, the inequalities represented by technology divide, you know, what poor families have access to, even in their neighborhood, let alone the technology, as opposed to, you know, what my daughters are secure in having. Somebody has to make a bloody decision to make sure every third grader, every fourth grader has access. You know, I was crazy about Khan Academy and IXL, making sure that Jacqueline and Morgan were doing their homework. But, I mean, that should be available to every American child. Right. So, and anyway.
No, I agree. Let's fill their stomachs and then we can fill their minds.
Yep. Yeah. So just talk to me a little bit about, you know, and I want to thank Kevin O'Toole. I want to thank the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and Chairman O'Toole and Commissioner McCabe and a number of folks, even my friend Chris Bulwich. It's like trying to get into the Port District, understanding after the aftermath of 9/11, there were concerns about people having court involvement, but clearly, somebody has court involvement because of drugs or because of a past history that is wholly unrelated. That shouldn't be a restriction. And so this is an opportunity through this Apple training to become an Apple tech. So with that said, what in the Almighty's name is an Apple tech?
I was actually talking to your team about this literally right before we started talking. Historically, we have a lot of information technology help desk people out there now who are Windows certified IT people, because that's what has been in business, in enterprise. And then quite a few years ago at this point, Apple started doing Apple as a choice, because really what people need is privacy, security, transparency, but also access to data in a meaningful way. And Apple had made great gains in all of these things. So we're seeing these larger organizations do what they call Apple as a choice. Hey, if we give you a choice, if you can accomplish your job using any device you want, and you can pick what you want, we're going to let you do that. And you're seeing these companies go from 0 to 20,000 devices in 3 years.
Yeah.
Except that you have a very talented IT staff who have no idea how to manage them. So they're not.
What does say that again? You have a very talented
IT team
who doesn't know how to manage the users?
The Apple ecosystem, the Apple device, whether it be an iPhone, an iPad, or a Mac, in their network. So they're not.
I'm showing the depth of my ignorance, but what is there to manage? I understand you have to manage, you have to make sure devices turn on, you have to make sure.
That's a great question. So I did a large deployment in Texas, 56,000 iPads for a school district, right? 56,000, one school district. And what are we managing? They just want to make sure that I'm going to let you unbox the device yourself. You're the end user. You unbox it. You get that experience because you get some ownership when you do that.
Yep.
And it's just going to automatically enroll into our management system. You're automatically going to get your mail set up. We're automatically going to make sure you have the apps that you need to be successful. And those apps are going to stay up to date. And we're going to want to make sure that our data is going to be separate from the data that you're sending to your family. Yep. All of that should be transparent and just happening. That's what I mean by managing. And when things don't work, like, hey, Craig, I can't get on the Wi-Fi, or I can't stream my Apple TV for some reason, we want to make sure that people can support that.
So when you're an Apple tech at a network, say, for example, whether it's the Port Authority of New York or New Jersey, or whether it's an insurance company, literally, what are they doing? Could you give me a couple of examples of what are they responding to?
So first is connectivity. Can I access my corporate data, whether that be from email or some cloud solution? Are we doing this in a secure way? There might be things called...
So what are the problems with connectivity?
It could be as simple as not having Wi-Fi. We're not having the right Wi-Fi, or not having secure Wi-Fi.
So that people have a basic understanding how the structure of Wi-Fi should happen, its strength, its variables, and how that
cellular
impacts.
included. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, can I connect to get my data?
Okay.
Should you be allowed to connect to get your data?
Okay.
Maybe you're traveling to a location.
I'm glad you and Apple have thought of all these questions.
Let's lead with Apple, and I'm just piggybacking
on that. Exactly. I'm the kind of guy that tries to move the boat and thinks I'm actually doing something. Or the invariable shut it off and turn it on, Greg.
Hey, that's actually works. Don't knock. Have you tried turning it off and on? That's that works a lot.
Yeah, exactly. What a way.
We just
so one is internet or
connectivity as a whole.
What's the second thing when you say an Apple tech will focus upon?
Access to their data in a meaningful, secure way.
What does that mean?
Sure. So you might be getting information about a lot of the upcoming projects you're working on, right? But maybe as a whole, you just don't want them on some open cloud network. You want it to be in your secure network. Like, I don't know if your organization uses like Microsoft's O365 or Google or some other solution. Yep. You want to make sure that you have access wherever you are in a secure, meaningful way.
Yep.
And if it's not working, I need to make sure that the people we're training have the ability to help you get there.
Yes. So, okay, it's connectivity. It's obviously accessing those resources. What else in terms of ed tech?
Doing it securely. Doing it.
So it almost echoes back to those first three virtues.
Always.
Interesting.
So remember, you're an end user.
Yep.
I want you to be as creative as possible, to be as productive as possible. It's my job to worry about how it all happens. Because if you have to worry about both, you can't be efficient.
Yep. So that's the beauty of the Apple system.
That's the beauty of that Apple ecosystem.
And I can use that system to whatever degree I can or cannot use, and I can use it for whatever function.
And then hopefully maybe we even get a few diamonds in the rough who go, I like this. Next thing you know, they're writing the next cool app.
Yep.
Right? So maybe that's the next step where they're thinking about ways to use the technology that I haven't thought about. Yep. Hopefully.
And so you have the intro to the ecosystem. You have the intro to serving as a tech.
Yeah, that's the device support.
The device support. And then what's after that?
So there is a deployment and management course, and that's a heavy lift. That's the right person who wants to not just be the tier 1, tier 2 desktop support kind of person. That's the person who wants to manage it all. Like I said, I deployed 56,000 devices. It's the person who wants to manage those 56,000 devices. That's deployment and management. And
how long is that course for?
It depends on how far they want to go, but it's a lift. An experienced IT person can take a course in a week or so, but it's applying that knowledge can take months. Okay. I know when there's changes and I'm taking a course, there's people telling me things, but there's a difference between being told and understanding. Exactly. So I'll be happy to get them to tell them to try and draw that picture, but it requires them to actually apply that knowledge repetitively to understand it. So where did this Apple curriculum, where did this curriculum come from?
Where do the sort of the course, the guidelines, the rules, the lessons, the information?
It's kind of like chicken and an egg, right? It's Apple had training years and years and years ago, and it was mildly adopted. And then Apple started doing Apple as a choice. People started doing it, and then people were like, well, now we need to get trained. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? As far as the creation of the content, Apple has a wonderful internal development team. And what's great about that team is they're never done. They're always updating it because Apple's changing their technology and evolving that technology 2 or 3 times a year. People think it's once. It's not.
Yeah.
It's dynamic. And then Apple is listening to what people want. Not to get down to the Steve Jobs rabbit hole, but you mentioned him. One of the things that I love that he said, if you wait for people to ask or tell you what they want, it's too late. You missed it.
Yep.
So Apple,
you have to anticipate.
Apple is already developing the next set of curriculum.
It's just amazing to me. It's just amazing to me how proactive they are in terms of even not only designing the curriculum but packaging the curriculum. Mm-hmm. It was not at all, Craig. It was not at all what I had anticipated.
And
it was like it was mind-boggling how much creative energy they invested in understanding that it's the creativity of each individual. And that Apple is merely a vehicle. And it was, frankly, it was a game changer for me.
And they're not sitting still.
Yep.
You know?
How about Apple quality? I mean, so we understand everything I have is an Apple device, but how does Apple maintain quality? I'm focusing not on the computers, but in terms of job training and pedagogy and making sure that, so is somebody are different folks, depending on their proficiency, are they taught differently, or does one size fit all? And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense.
No.
But I mean, is it taught the way language is taught? Is it taught the way?
I don't know if I can answer that well. I can always tell you that, and it's hard for me to be subjective about that because I've been in it so long.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned many, many years ago, and now I've taken it and I apply it as well, is Apple just doesn't say, hey, the sky is blue. There's a mentor who's walking you outside by your hand and goes, let's look at the sky. What color do you think it is?
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the sky. Now you can say, oh, that's a little touchy-feely, but always having a mentor, mentors, leaders. And by the way, just because you have a title up here doesn't necessarily make you the mentor. Sometimes, depending on the project, it could be somebody young who's got a slightly different view, and they can be the mentor.
Yeah.
So I just feel that the quality is the people, not the product.
Mm. Sometimes there are battles to get court-involved people within the workforce. What's Apple's perspective about the court-involved?
I can't answer anything about Apple. I have no idea what their battles are.
Well, some people have, for good or for bad reasons. Mm-hmm. I mean, but I guess what I'm saying, if I want to be an Apple tech, does it make a difference that I have historically have a court jacket, have a drug offense?
I really think that's going to come down to a company by company decision, right?
Okay.
Like I could tell you from my company, and I know for people that I work with, I don't think the answer is going to be it's a decision point or counterpoint at all. I think if you meet the requirements that we need, then you meet the requirements we need. But I can't speak for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. And if you were to look at sort of the history of Apple sales, why is this the idea of becoming an Apple tech? Why is this a good idea in terms of the future extension or the future development of Apple and the expansion into different markets?
I think the bottom line is if you have the entrepreneurial spirit and you're looking on where you want to generate your revenue for the next, let's say, 20 years, you just need to follow the charts. Apple is here. Everyone else is here. So if you want job security, if you want a job to begin with, learn the Apple technology.
My gosh, you make Apple sound like the New Jerusalem.
Listen, we've been around long enough to know things ebb and flow. But if you just look at the quality of the product and the direction that they're going, it's the right direction.
Sure. And for you, sort of directing this class, what do you bring to this class? What thoughts or ideas or?
That's a great question. You know, I always tell people that I don't know when my father's lessons become my lessons, right? And I say my father, but everyone who's come before me. And I guess if you're the recipient of my lesson and you only hear it from my mouth, then it's my lesson. But I would say I'm just the combined wisdom of everyone who came before me and the people I choose to surround myself with.
And if you were to say to folks that were court involved, that are struggling, trying to figure out a career, have a strong interest, however, in computers, what would you say about this as an industry and how this will work with them or not work with them?
Well, one of the things about the traditional IT person, it's always been, you know, shirt, tie, walk straight line, sit in your cubicle. Where the Apple IT person has been Steve Jobs turtleneck, pair of blue jeans, and you know, I would say this lets them keep their identity, you know, who they are. They don't have to change, you know, and if anything, bringing some of their history and their struggle might, I think, make them a stronger worker. You know, lets them be creative and bring that creativity, brings their struggle.
So it's about accessing creativity to the technology. Mm-hmm. And so, Craig, we're really grateful. You've got the.
I'm grateful.
No, but
I'm honored to be here. I'm like, you know, it's the right thing to do.
Isn't it the right thing to do?
It is.
And it's just, to me, it's giving people access to this technology, giving them access to your wisdom, to your teaching, to your years, to your father, to the history. You know, it's really special. It's something to be celebrated. How does it it sounds corny, but how does it make you feel as a person, as an instructor, as a conveyor of wisdom?
I wake up every day giddy that I'm about to start my day. I didn't have to be here till a certain time today, and I showed up 3 hours early because I could not wait to be here.
God bless you.
That should say it all. I want to be here. I don't have to be here. I choose to be here.
I know.
And I'm happy to be here.
Well, I appreciate you coming to the sacred soil of New Jersey, coming from on the other side of the river. But thank you so much, Craig. And thank you for the gift that you're giving to our program participants.
Thank you, Governor.
I'm really grateful.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all.